It's another episode of Feed the Trolls, and you're going to see this dude's face quite a bit because he's doing PGL Bucharest. So we thought we would bring him in here to have a little chat with us. dusT is joining Thorin and myself, and we're going to have the conversation about two teams everyone is talking about that we're all super excited about. Of course, it is Vitality and MOUZ. They've only played against each other twice, but we're already talking about a rivalry for the ages. I've seen people talking about the Vitality era. It's all happening, so let's break this one down. I want to start, though, by first asking both of you, what went through your mind the day MOUZ announced that they were benching siuhy? I'm just curious because I know for me, I thought, well, goodbye, MOUZ. You're absolutely screwed now. Everything is a mess. What did you think, Thorin?
I mean, there's a bunch of angles. Like, first things first, if you actually think of how weird the normal phrasing that teams use, normally you actually bench people, even if they're leaving for, like, they want to leave. Like, they're not even kicked. Like, you know, like you see, if you notice, like, the Russian teams do this all the time. They'll, like, bench someone to put them onto the transfer list. But the way you say benched in the West, it means, like, I chose to put you on the bench. But actually, they do it when that person's like, actually, I want to leave now, basically, and there's a team's going to buy me. So, first thing I assumed was he must be being sold because everyone, remember, at the end of last season, was thinking, right, what's going to happen is basically everyone except the joke is everyone except Brollan and Thorin just going to other teams, aren't they? Like Yimfat's going over here, Exertion's going over here, and then siuhy's going to whatever team wants an IGL. So my initial assumption was, does this mean someone's basically bought him, but they just did it like after the transfer sort of window, as it were? Like they just decided, like, you know, panic at the beginning of the season. Yeah, we'll do it anyway. Like you could figure out who that could be, a G2, whatever. There's a whole bunch of teams who would be motivated to do it. I did also then think, here's the thing, I never went as far as other people, which is like the key thing is, when I heard it was spinx coming in, I was like, this is going to be interesting. I'll tell you what, they could, like, I don't know how this will possibly work, because in CSGO, you couldn't just put 5 fraggers together, it would work. But you would think to yourself, you'd still have a lot of firepower in this team, though. There'll be something to this. If anything, I would have probably guessed it'd be more like, you know, you could barely make the playoffs, but then you could never win a match because you don't have an IGL. You just have fragging only, you know. So I know I never ever imagined it could be this good, but I did think like the spinx angle made it a bit different. That's the part also about the siuhy move that never made sense, because on paper, I've never even heard anyone intimate that Brollan would be an IGL. That's the weirdest part. There was no foreshadowing. So it just became implausible to believe this was actually like MOUZ sitting down like, right, we prefer Brollan as IGL and we want spinx to come in, because the spinx move almost seemed like an afterthought. Like, right, well, who can we get? And then they didn't want to get an IGL, because that's actually the weirdest part, is why they weren't just bringing another IGL in to replace siuhy as well. So I think there's actually more kind of like angles to this than people realize. It wasn't just like a 1-for-1 for me.
How about you, dusT?
I mean, to me, there was a lot of red flags around this whole situation. One, you know, I agree with a lot with what Thorin kind of said, so I'll just kind of echo that. But the other two weird things about it that happened around it that really made you question it was, one, they re-signed Jimmy. So this whole angle of like selling siuhy becomes a little bit different now, because it's like, oh, well, you retain one of your star players. So apparently you're very keen on not being a feeder team right now. You're very keen on building on the top 5 performance you've had in 2024. Okay. So you've re-signed Jimmy, but now siuhy is gone. So that was a red flag for me. Then the other red flag was the timing of it. Because remember, they didn't do this during the offseason. They played the Bounce Bounty qualifier with siuhy, which made it seem like something must have happened behind the scenes that we're never going to know about, potentially, that made them make this abrupt decision, which to me means that they weren't planning on this move initially. And that also makes sense why they didn't have another IGL lined up, because this probably kind of happened, maybe not last minute, but it's something that happened quite rapidly. And so that in itself was very odd. And then, yeah, there's the obvious angle of, you know, how's Brollan going to do as an IGL, right? Like, we always ask this question anytime, you know, someone takes over the role for the first time, especially when it happens young in their career, right? We know a lot of people will eventually become an IGL maybe later in their career when their star days are over, or when they're like more of a veteran. They either go the IGL route to kind of keep their career going, or they go the coaching route. And so you expect that. But with Brollan, he was still, you know, a young guy, one of their better players. You know, this certainly caught me off guard. It made me think that, wow, this team might be in some trouble when it comes to the shot calling.
Do you think that the spinx deal was already lined up? I mean, because I got the impression, because of how fast they moved, that maybe there was a conversation about bringing in spinx, and then there was kind of a situation where maybe he was meant to be replacing someone else, and then something happened, dusT, with siuhy, which made them kind of drop him. I don't know. Do you have any insight into that, or are we all just talking in circles now?
No further insight other than what was rumored, that apparently there was a chance that spinx may have come in to take Brollan's place, or to take someone else's place, or something like that, if siuhy was indeed going to be the long-term IGL solution for the team. So you know, in that regard, maybe that's the case. We'll never know. But the other situation is look, if you are going to dedicate to Brollan being the IGL and you don't really see another IGL option out there, obviously you have to just bring in talent to make up for that, you know, to make it worth your while. And obviously spinx was a great player to pick up because with Brollan kind of pivoting to likely play a lot of siuhy's roles, spinx fits in quite nicely as a guy who can play some extremity roles, play some trade fragging roles, be that mid to late round specialist, you know, be a guy that brings experience to the table. You know, something that the team was lacking very much is veteranship. And so having someone like that who's been through it with Vitality and other teams and has played many majors and many big tournaments, I thought, hey, maybe this is the guy that can kind of like push them over the edge when it comes to the big arena events.
Thorin, did you expect MOUZ to be as good as they've been with
I don't
these
think
changes?
anyone, I don't even believe that Cyclone or even any of the players would actually, for real, tell you that they thought this. Like, for me, it was, because if you remember, like, realistically, even though I understand other teams have changed rosters, you can't really compare, like, last year's teams to this year's teams, a slightly different field of top 10. Like, I actually think, beyond IGL aspects, they actually do look like a better team than last year. Like, this team, the difference was they were like chokers in the big arenas. It's not like they win every time now, but the difference is they give away better accounting for themselves. And I would say like the floor of the team looks amazing. I mean, people have probably seen that mad graphic where the Jokers, they only lose to Vitality now. Like they beat everyone else. They even beat Spirit when they play them. So what's bizarre is you could even argue on some level they're better than last year. The problem now obviously is everyone's still just going to do the what if we could just have siuhy instead of Brollan and have spinx still there. Could we just have it all at once? You know, would that be like the ultimate team? Would that be number one? Would that be a top two? Because at the point right now, you have to argue they could actually be the second best team, even though it doesn't really make sense to anyone. No one's really come up with a coherent theory. And you notice most people, even when they're like congratulating Brollan, they're almost doing it like, hey, I don't know how you're doing this or what you're doing, but whatever it is, I don't know, keep it up or something. No one's going like, wow, you actually are a secret cracked out IGL. Like, wow, all this makes sense. In fact, that's why the question you asked dusT, I think, is an interesting one, because if I had to guess, I don't really believe this was like some crazy 5D move by Cyclone, that he was like, right, what I want to do is like spinx is available. So what I'll do is I'll recruit him, but he would logically have Brollan spots, and Brollan maybe I could shape him an IGL. I would guess it'd be the other way around, and it's more like something's happened with siuhy. Brollan was the person within the team who was like, I could maybe do it, or I've been thinking about it, or something I have considered. And then it was like, well, perfect. Actually, the one person on the transfer market that's really good that for some bizarre reason no team wants, I still don't get that, is spinx, and he's available. So actually, we could put him in your roles, and then you could give being an IGL a go. If that part is true, that part has actually sort of turned out to be genius, because no one kind of knew what a crazy upside it would bring. But no, I don't think anyone can really say they thought it would be this good, especially like the nature of how they do it. Like, one of the most bizarre things is they almost break every rule of Counter-Strike, because one of the rules of making like super teams is the reason they never work is no one ever really gets all the roles for the super team players though. So all you end up doing is you have the player's name on paper, but then in the server he's not going to be the guy he was in that other team where he had everything going well for him. What's amazing is somehow they've made all the roles work in this team. In fact, it's like I say, aside from you don't really see like genius like 700 IQ calls mid-round, everything else they do in the game, they do really well, actually. They're just like a really good team.
So the biggest sort of criticism, I suppose, if you would consider this criticism to MOUZ, is that it's not going to be a long-term success. It's just a firepower upgrade, and over time that they'll get shut down.
Tell Spirit that.
I was about to say, I mean, I'd argue after 3 events.
That's the cope a lot of people are telling themselves right now, Sam. Every team that isn't Vitality is telling themselves, it's all right. It's just going to be it's a honeymoon period. Yeah, everyone's just telling themselves that, of course.
I mean, that's what's being said. But even then, when the move originally happened, that was the comment that was made. Oh, they'll be very good in the beginning because
people
it's
thought
great
it was a
firepower.
stopgap. Yeah, people thought like the idea was you just do Brollan temporarily and they're going to bring in another IGL, and this was a bigger plan. True.
So is that really fair though? Now that we've had a chance, we've seen them in 3 finals. They've won 1 trophy, second to Vitality twice. I would argue at Blast, yes, the first map not good, but they brought it back. I mean, would you say it is just a firepower thing? I know there's question marks around the calling. There's always going to be question marks around the calling, but I do think that there is a bit more depth to this team maybe than people are giving them credit for. dusT?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things going on at once right now that is making MOUZ good at the moment. And, you know, to kind of kick things off, yes, spinx obviously brings a ton of firepower to the table. Again, great in all of his roles. They pretty much gave him everything that he wanted. The only real things he had to change was obviously he didn't play Ancient on Vitality. That was their permaban. So they had to figure out a way to implement him into Ancient and kind of get him up to speed on how to play that map and what they wanted to do there. And then they did change his position on Inferno more of an active role in mid instead of being an apartments player. So there's a couple little tweaks here and there, but other than that, everything kind of fell into place naturally in that regard. So I think that helped spinx out automatically. Also, he came in kind of knowing that he was going to be a veteranship figure that people would look up to, and probably he could have impact other than just his play, whether that be, team cohesion or the secondary calling he might do or whatever the case may be. So I think that was big. And I think the other big thing for me is that the calling actually really hasn't dropped off that much. I think their playbook's a little bit more streamlined than it used to be. They don't have quite as many openers as they used to, but they're decisive in the mid round, actually. Like, they don't play like, they're like the anti-Liquid. I want to say it this way, because Liquid's big issue with twisT when he became the IGL, which is kind of, a similar thing to what Brollan's trying to do, is that they get stuck in the mid round. They look like they're playing not to lose. It look like they're trying to figure out the perfect mid round call, and they get like stalled out somewhere on the map, and they just kind of sit there forever and never really commit. Whereas when I watch Mouse Sports play, they play with confidence. They play with grit. Like, they make the mid-round call and they go for it. Even if it's not necessarily the most optimal mid-round call, they all commit to it together as a unit, and they can make stuff happen. So, I'm really liking what I'm seeing across the board, really, as far as just roles, how they look in the mid-round, how they look tactically in general, how players are performing. Xerxin has stepped up big time. TechGirlZA was already a great operator. Looks even better this year. Now, how much of that is the roster change? How much of that is just natural because they're getting more reps and more experience? We'll never know, but whatever it is, it works. So don't mess with it.
It does work, Thorin, but now I suppose the question is, what is it now that's working that didn't work with siuhy? Because they were a really good team. They were a good team
they
then.
were good. Yeah.
But for some reason, there was that whole stigma around them of being chokers. That's gone. Is it just a matter of adding spinx, who brings maybe a little bit of confidence? Was it a matter of having to have a new IGL? What do you think was the change?
Well, one of the funniest things to me is I do think that when people like imbue qualities to entire teams of 5 players, so like a collective, you're giving them like a quality of one person, is it never quite works 100%. Like, I always give this example back in the day. If you remember when the Brazilians first became the best in Counter-Strike, they looked like the most clutch team you've ever seen. They won like every 3v3 and 2v2 at the end of the round. But I always tell people, there's no way all 5 players actually were just like the clutchest player. It's just like something about how they played together made it look like that. Like, all of a sudden, Taco seemed like super clutch and he would do all this crazy stuff. But all I'll say is, when you bring people in and out of the lineup over the years, you find out like maybe it was just like Fallen and Cold Zero or something, or it was FNX. It was like certain players had that aspect. So one of the things that is weird when you do the sum of this player plus this player equals, it can sometimes be the classic more than the sum of their parts. Because what's weird is, one of the critiques a lot of people had about spinx, I don't think it was unjustified, is he would have amazing numbers on that, like, web page on HLTV for like the overall rating for the event, but a lot of that would be from like group stage, and then once he got to a big final, he sometimes had a little drop off. So I think a lot of people would have said, actually, spinx probably isn't the cure if you're having like choking issues or people underperforming. But I actually think, first of all, he has looked fucking sick from the second he actually arrived in the lineup. Once he actually got into the team, not when they had the stand-in at Katowice, once he started playing, he's looked like just as good as he ever did in Vitality. So it seems like actually he's like, it doesn't seem like he needs his hand held. And actually, as a team, like I said, I do think they look better in the big playoff matches now. Look, we still haven't seen them in like, a Katowice type. You're in the semi-finals. It's that giant walk. You haven't had that stage quite yet. Blast was pretty cool, but it doesn't have the same prestige. So I can't be certain, but I do think that's helped. Like, one thing I think is an obvious move, which I think people did finally pick up on after the Cluj one, is, even though people were down on the move because they think Brollan isn't as good as siuhy, the difference is, I think it's not even that debatable. Like, spinx is better at that role than Brollan. It's like a pure like lurker. And by the way, on the T side, he's fucking sick. Like, the amount of fragging he does there is bonkers. Like, this guy just feels like he never loses, like a mid-range AK duel. He's fucking unbelievably good. So that part has been an upgrade. And by the way, MOUZ already had that pretty good firepower and all the roles were good. And with you as well, dusT. Somehow there's been a weird aspect where like a bunch of other people look like they're playing better. Like, the weirdest one is TechGirlZA. He actually now sometimes does look like their best and most impactful player. Whereas actually a lot of the people, if you remember in last year's lineup, used to give that credit to siuhy. Their logic was, well, he used to be up and down when Dexter was there, but siuhy was his old like MOUZ NXT IGL, and so he must be like the whisperer for TechGirlZA, and he's the one who can like bring out the best. Well, the joke is actually he's playing better without siuhy. He seems like the biggest guy who's taken the step up compared to the others. I will throw one thing out there though. The reason why I do think you have to consider it's not that it has to be a honeymoon period, but it could have like a slight dip, is I actually had a concept I came up with years ago where I call it like the in-game leader hangover effect. And the premise goes, just because the in-game leader leaves or gets kicked, it's not like you take all the notes and then like throw them in the bin. Like if you had anything that worked, you keep some of that and you build on it still. And if you have certain protocols, you keep those. So some of those things will continue even when the in-game leader is gone, which means some of his impact might still occur in the team. Or Brollan might actually, for real, just be doing like, I'm like siuhy light, basically, but I just frag a bit better. Like this, you have to consider that might be a factor too. But I'm with you. I actually think right now, with the current state of the top teams, they just are a really good team. We don't even have to make excuses or asterisks. Like right now, you put them in the server, they will beat most teams.
I do want to say one thing really quick here about the whole like choking aspect or the studio merchant label that MOUZ Sports got. To be fair to siuhy and just MOUZ Sports in general last year, they already did make ways in that correct direction, in my opinion, towards the end of the year. When they came top 4 at Cologne, when they came second at Rio, when they came top 4 at the major, that to me, they shed that storyline to me, because their only losses in those situations were to the eventual winners. They lost out to Navi at Cologne, Navi at Rio, and then they lost to Spirit at the major. Like and Navi at the time, and those losses, by the way, was on that like crazy 6 finals in a row streak and all that jazz. So it's like, I think there were already building blocks and signs of MOUZ's ability to climb out of that shadow, even at the end of last year, in my opinion. And what has happened, I think, at the beginning of this year is you breathe new life into the team with a new player. Maybe the environment's a little bit better. Because I would have to assume that it wasn't a performance-based issue that siuhy left. It had to have been some other type of disagreement. So maybe the atmosphere is better. You add the honeymoon phase aspect to it, everything feels fresh and new. Like, I think it just kind of just doused gasoline on embers that were already kind of forming at the end of last year, in my opinion.
I do back you there on dusT. I think we were actually on the desk during the MOUZ game where we had this conversation about the fact that that whole choking aspect had to be gone because at that point it wasn't the case. However, I do think once a name is designed for a team, it tends to stick. So every time they lost on stage, they were going to be called the chokers. But it's something Kassad said a long time ago, and I think he actually said it on this show. I can't believe Kassad's coming up in every episode, but there you go. And he mentioned that
cultural impact.
Cultural impact out of this world.
He mentioned that it's not just, he said, like, fans are always like, well, just take this player out and put this one in. And he was like, well, you don't know what the impact is, like the ripples, right? It's like throwing a stone in a pond. I would argue maybe in this case, that the stone in the pond and those ripples were a good one for MOUZ. It feels like this kind of, whatever happened with siuhy is, we're never going to know, or maybe we will, who knows. But it kind of feels like they just needed that shakeup. But because of the term honeymoon period, would we say that the shakeup's been good, morale in the team is good, but if you look at them playing and what we're seeing in the server, dusT, is it a honeymoon period? Do you think that other teams are going to get their number relatively quickly?
No, I don't. Just watching them play, like looking through their film, they look really damn sharp. Like, they're still kept a lot of the same strengths that Lauren was kind of talking about, this whole like concept of the IGL hangover. Like, they still have the same defaults and protocols. They still have the same pacing changes. They still have the very dynamic, T and CT sides where they can be very mobile. They can move around quite a lot. They can kind of condition people, mask things very effectively. And look, I think the biggest thing for them with this new roster that has made that system even more powerful is the fact that, everyone's pretty much kept their role. Like, Jimmy's doing what he's supposed to be doing. Zershan's still that very aggressive entry guy. TechGirlZA, again, just continues to climb as an opera. I actually think he's top 3 opera in the world right now. I'll just say that. But the other thing is, for me, is that even if Zershan fails the entry, spinx's trade fragging potential was so freaking high on this team. And I think that has made all of their executes just feel a little bit more potent. Like, the fact that he can just kind of slot in the middle of some of those situations and just make sure, hey, if Zershan doesn't get the entry, I'm going to get that follow-up. And even Jimmy shows a little bit more willingness to kind of step out and get in the slot and trade a little bit more as well. So, I mean, I just think they look very well-rounded in all regards. I think the only real question is, right now, we don't really know what their map pool is. And what I mean by that is, like, we know they're very good at Ancient and they're very good at Nuke. Like, we know that for sure. And they've been an early adopter of training that's worked out for them. But their other maps, we don't really know how good they are yet, because even though their records are negative, their losses are the Vitality in almost every regard. So it's like, how good is their dusT to an Inferno really? Like, I don't think we know yet. Same with Mirage. So that's the one thing I'm going to keep an eye on, is like, how do they look when they play different types of opposition on some of these maps where, unfortunately, their record looks just very skewed because they're getting knocked by Vitality all the time.
What do we rate Brollan as an IGL, or do we need more time to make that call?
Here's the genius of it. It doesn't have to be that he's either secretly like doing all this or he's not doing anything. Like, first of all, he must be doing something, even if, by the way, I'll give you the obvious analogy for me. This reminds me of when actually, first of all, reminds me of when Huxley did have the JKS, Hunter, that super lineup where everyone used to just go give him no credit at all and go, anyone with those players would win. Like, first of all, anyone wouldn't. Like, you still have to be a competent IGL. But there is actually a style of being a coach or a manager or an in-game leader that I think is underrated, which is when you work with people who are self-directed and are really good, sometimes knowing how to get out of the way or how not to overburden them is actually the secret sauce. Like, essentially, like you are integrating what they're doing and what they're wanting to do in the round into an overall picture. So I would just say, to me, it looks like he is doing quite a sort of like loose style where people just know their jobs. People do their jobs, like as just described there. Like, it's funny, everyone raves about it when they look at the way that like the way that like fucking Frozen and Elige like trade off each other. Like, mate, at this point in time, spinx and Xerxes are better, mate. Like, they're like unbeatable. It was even one of the things I was noticing in this final, dusT, was like everyone else that Vitality plays. The reason why it looks like an absolute piss take when Vitality plays at the moment is even if you get a kill on them, it's like the scoreboard just instantly shows they get 2 kills back, and you're like, what the fuck? I'm never winning against them. That wasn't the case. MOUZ was the only team I saw that, like, you could even see it was like shocking Vitality. They would get a kill, and actually MOUZ would get like a couple of kills back, and like, fuck, they can actually frag with us. Like, no one else can do that right now. So to me, I actually think it's quite an interesting aspect, because it looks to me like Brollan, I gotta say, unlike past examples, it's hard. I don't think anyone's going to be making like strat videos out of them. Like, oh, look at this amazing call they made here, or they were like setting them up here. Some of them really just does look like round to round calls. But at the moment, whatever sparse type of call they're doing or simple setup, it works. It's allowing these players to actually play awesome, because I do think they have 4 of the best players in the world in their roles, like in their actual roles. These are some of the best you can get. And it turns out whatever they do, like the joke in this, it absolutely is like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just leave it like this. Just see how long this works, because right now, I'm with you, dusT. I don't even think they actually are on pit. The difference is when Vitality has those crazy win rates, they can't all really be like 70%. Some of them must be a map you're not actually that comfortable on. They just beat people. I almost think like some of that's like the other way around with MOUZ. I almost am certain they are bad on a couple of maps, but they're just so good at firepower, mate. I've seen them still beat teams on those maps and get the win. So it's like no one really, I also think right now, no one really knows how to veto into them. A lot of teams have tried doing like punish pictures of it. It hasn't worked.
Yeah, I think the other promising thing that I've seen out of MOUZ Sports as well, just to add here, is the fact that they went from getting blown out by Vitality in the best of 5 at EPL to playing them very close 0-2 in the groups of Lisbon to, in the grand finals, getting destroyed 0-13 in map 1 of a grand final best of 5, which has got to be like just ludicrous on the brain, to then come back and win 2 maps and put the series back in the contest. And I just think they ran out of steam once they got the train. I just don't think they were ready for it. Even I think Brollan admitted that by that point in the series, he just wasn't prepared to be able to handle what they were in at that moment in time. I mean, best of 5s rarely go 5, Matt. That's real. And so the fact that they did go all 5, the fact they were able to make progress against this Vitality team that no one else is seemingly able to do, I think that is a good sign in itself, that from event to event, they are figuring them out and getting a little bit better at playing against them.
I do think like mad respect to Brollan, though. I have a lot of respect for IGLs that, one, stand up and do the loser interviews, Astralis, but also two, when an IGL, and he did this in the interview, he said, I wasn't ready for the decider. I wasn't prepared. I didn't play well. I let the team down as a leader. But I was like, I'm going to give you respect to be able to stand on that stage and say, listen, I wasn't prepared for this. I like mentally wasn't in that space, which I think is what held them back. It's a good sign for the future. What isn't a good sign for the future is a question that also happened in a loser interview on a stage to siuhy about Yimfat and whether or not he would be staying with MOUZ. Obviously, it surprised everyone, Thorin, dusT, that he stayed this year, because there was all that talk about him going to Falcons. We saw all the rumors about if m0NESY goes, he goes. So now, as it stands with what we're looking at with MOUZ, do you think he is staying? Because a lot of us had put sort of bank on the fact that after the next major, Falcons was going to swoop in and start grabbing more players and possibly a m0NESY Yimfat move would happen? Or do you think, based on what we've seen from that Saudi org and how they've performed and how MOUZ is now doing, this team sticks together after the major? dusT?
Who are you asking? Oh,
I'll ask dusT first, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jimmy just signed a fresh new contract, didn't he? So, I mean,
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Falcons has more money than anyone, so that maybe doesn't matter to them. They could still find a way to match that buyout, but it is a fresh contract. And so, just forgetting the financials of it, I think that just shows Jimmy is committed. right? I think he had a way out, and even if the Falcons thing didn't happen, he could have shopped around and found himself another team if he really wanted to leave MOUZ Sports. I'm sure there would have been teams that were willing to look at him. So I think it is a sign of faith in
Okay.
his position to re-sign to a longer-term contract. Obviously, spinx is now on a fresh contract, so he's going to be there committed for some time. So look, I think that as it stands, no matter what happens, with the amount of success that they've already had in these 3 finals appearances, I think you got to ride this one out for a little while, right? And yeah, maybe eventually they're going to hit a wall. Maybe eventually they're going to start running into some problems tactically. Maybe they're eventually going to get figured out a little bit, or maybe something in their map pool gets exposed. But the great thing about it is that they have so much room, considering they've been together for such a short amount of time, to be able to make the adjustments as need be. And they have the coaching staff behind them to help them do it, and the veteranship, the spinx, and some of these other voices that can come up with ideas. Torres seems to be calling his own shots as an opera, which is always great as well. So yeah, I mean, here's the thing: like, they haven't hit a wall yet, but even if they do, there's so much room for them to tinker with things and adjust things as needed to continue to find a way to be successful. And I think at worst case, they're still going to be a top 5 team in the world for probably the entire year.
This is where people actually don't get creative enough with their conspiracy theories and their angles. Because here's the obvious angle everyone's been missing. This is like some Kaiser Soze shit, isn't it? Where Jimmy seems like this super chill. He's just this crazy, wacky Finnish guy who's all young and chill, and he's just good at the game. And lol, he left porn up one time. He didn't, by the way. As far as I know, like, he left his phone and some teammate retweeted that or whatever to fuck with him. And if people don't know, like, he didn't even really do that. I think that was like a meme within his team, and he's just ridden with it, right? But what people don't realize is maybe he is the evil mastermind. Maybe what actually happened, Tech Girl, is this. He was about to leave off to Falcons, but then he finds out what Munsey isn't going, but I was only joining for the super team in the bag. And he goes, I tell you what, MOUZ, I'll stay, but you have to kick out siuhy and bring in spinx, and you have to do it. Maybe he's the one who orchestrated this whole thing. So all I'm going to say is him staying is the most weirdest part about that move. That's why everyone thinks, I mean, it just has to be at this point in time. It has to be some sort of an attitude / personality conflict with siuhy and, let's just say, either someone or everyone. It was implied to me it was everyone. So which made it, which, by the way, I have to say, it made it seem to me like he just went nuts one day, or he had a massive argument with people, or they got some ultimatum, like it's him or me, and then the joke is they picked him instead of me or whatever in this analogy. So the reason why is, because if you're Yimfat, by the way, that was actually the biggest sentiment. The biggest sentiment wasn't even, wow, MOUZ is fucked, or what happened to siuhy. Everyone was just like, lol, imagine being Yimfat now. Like, you said no to Falcons because you thought I have MOUZ in my back pocket, and now basically MOUZ might be shit. That was actually the implication. The problem right now for me is this: whether or not Falcons come, if it really was the case he was only joining because he wanted it to be the super team of like him, Nico, Munsey. By the way, that did sound like an amazing roster on paper. You can't say no to that if you're the Yimfat one there. Like, you're joining the best players ever. The problem is, if it isn't those crazy players, maybe you don't want to do that move. And actually, right now, you wouldn't, would you? Like, right now, the joke is the only team you join if you're Yimfat is Vitality. Like, you can beat everyone else. In fact, I would say this: people did this with Nico, but the difference is there's other things behind the scenes as to why Nico left. If you're Yimfat, if you join Falcons tomorrow, I don't think Falcons is better than this MOUZ. Like, I actually probably wouldn't do that move. You only really do that move for money, or if there is a Munsey angle. By the way, I'd also say this as well. I would tell everyone, just pump the brakes on the Munsey thing. It actually is implied, if you look how that played out. That was, people took a very real move, which was always going to happen. More about that in the future. Of Nico was going to join Falcon. It was already a done deal last year. I'll just say that. It was never ever in doubt. There wasn't like he had to make, he'd already, I can't say more than this, but it was definitely going to happen. It wasn't like before where he could not do it because he hadn't signed at the end. Let's just say, infer what I think, what I'm trying to imply here. It was definitely going to happen. The difference was, as far as I know, the Munsey angle was just some sort of like overdrive type. Yeah, and then this too. And then everyone in their brain conflated the two and thought the two were like certain things that were going to happen. And everyone thought it was guaranteed Munsey joins his team. I just thought it was guaranteed Munsey left. I mean, he's basically intimated that's going to happen anyway. So actually, I've sort of forgotten about the Infat to Falcons thing, because if it was contingent on Munsey joining, maybe that never happens. So I feel like actually it was just a whole new world at MOUZ now. Like, you can just consider this a top team. If anything as well, if there was ever a problem in MOUZ now, you could also go the other way and go, don't we just get it upgraded and become the number one team? Like, why don't we try and get a God IGL and then sit with the 4 players, like I say? Wouldn't that be possible?
Yeah, I think that you hit it right there. The fact that MOUZ went from sending players elsewhere, like what happened with ropz, what happened with Frozen, what happened obviously with Kerrigan, all these different things that have come and gone through this MOUZ team, the fact that they basically turned the main team from their academy team in all slots except for Brollan. Now that they have decided to re-sign Jimmy and acquire spinx, I think the game has changed. Like, they're no longer considering themselves some type of like, let's just like moneyball our way into like scouting up young and upcoming talent, do pretty well with it, sell it off, profit that way. Like, no, like they want to be a serious contender now. And I think that these moves that they have made signal what their long-term vision is, I think, or at least that's what they're hoping is going to be.
Put it this way, you know, when this recent thing happened where, because of Blade's comments, people are speculating like who might leave or join. And someone, again, I think it was one of the leakers, so this wasn't Blade, but one of the leakers was like, maybe even Alexi B can be removed. Mate, if Alexi B leaves Na'Vi, I'm MOUZ. I just send him a black check. Like, mate, you complete the lineup. Like, come and just fucking win everything.
So, two things, Thorin. You have hinted about this bigger Nico story to Falcons for many months now, so I'm patiently waiting for the full release. I'm presuming one day it will pop up on your YouTube
Something
channel.
like that, yeah.
We are waiting. Stop teasing. And second off, I'm also going to clip all the conspiracy theories. I think we're on like episode 39 now. Like all the conspiracy theories you've had over these episodes, because there's a lot of them. Put them all together.
Loads. Yeah.
It's just like a crazy. And then hopefully like the internet dies and all that's left is that. And that's what people believe was Counter-Strike.
Of course.
So Thorin's crazy conspiracy theories. We've spoken a lot about MOUZ. Obviously, I think they've now moved from, like you both said, that team that used to find these like young talents, rise them up and sell them to like a serious contender. But there is that wall that's standing in their way. And it is a team that everyone's talking about because they're winning freaking everything. And it is, of course, Vitality with ropz. My first question is specifically about ropz. Am I correct in saying, because again, I should have probably researched this more, but I'm going to ask, they got him on a free transfer?
Yeah.
That's right. Did FaZe?
That's a fumble from FaZe, yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a famous thing about. Unfortunately, it's a famous thing about the FaZe org. It's actually, by the way, the original complaint of Yanko when he coached FaZe and Nico when he was the star player of FaZe. They say the problem with FaZe as an org is they're just really slow to move on like contract type shit. Like supposedly, if you remember back in like 2019, when FaZe kept signing all those people to be like the Carragher replacement, but they were all like obviously temporary ones. Like you would have like fucking Adren come over and be like, then you would have Neo come and be the agile, and you were like, what? These moves are like players that are years beyond like their prime, and even they're not even considered top at their role. As far as I know, that's because those really were stopgap moves while they were trying to sign, like, you know, the Alexes of the world from Vitality, etc. And I was just told they were just so slow with doing like whoever the corporate people were with doing the actual deals. It's like the deal would never get done, or the player would go elsewhere in the meantime. So it's intimated basically because they've done this twice. You might have seen it was Yanko who made that tweet. They did this with both twisT and with ropz. They took two players, which on paper, by the way, even if they leave, you want to sell them so you get money and then you can invest in their replacement. And they not only let them go, but they did it when they both have been in top teams that made them super eligible. So it means basically your rival just gets that player for free. So that's the part that is a bit puzzling, I will say. I mean, maybe this explains it. Like, you know, maybe the people who are doing the deal aren't connected to CS day-to-day stuff and they're just off in some influencer FaZe clan world where they're signing Snoop Dogg or whatever. That could be plausible. But it also does seem like at the moment, this is one reason you don't see me oftentimes saying stuff like, imagine Manisi on FaZe. I'll do that as like a pure thought experiment. I don't think it's ever going to happen because, first of all, like, they don't look like they do giant signings. And I think right now, if people were honest, the real reason you join FaZe is to play with Carragher. It's not even, by the way, they're not even some like Falcons thing where you get the 60K a month. Like that's like the old reputation of FaZe like 10 years ago. I don't even think actually they'd seem like they're a super well-run org. They just have Carragher and a couple of other really good pieces. And if you have those pieces, a lot of stars, it's like, right, well, that's where I could be successful. I think that's actually the main reason people join right now.
You know what's weird to me about that whole situation, Thorin, is like apparently like it was intimated that one of the reasons why ropz left the team was because he wanted them to be able to upgrade. Like he wanted them to be able to have more talent around him so that they have a better chance of winning. And one of the owners or something like that said on a Twitch stream or something that like at the time we just couldn't do it, right?
Yes.
Like at the time we just didn't have what we needed to be able to get that type of player that ropz wanted us to get to be able to, you know, satisfy that desire. But then they let him go on a free and they bought a liege. So what happened? Like that's what's puzzling to me. Like, how did you not, you know, ropz, listen, we're going to sign a liege. Like, stick it out. Like, that's a weird one for me. That's the one I don't understand.
Sure.
I think that there was, and again, I might not be correct here, but I think something I read, the one benefit of FaZe's Counter-Strike team is they are pretty much like self-managed. So they're not, there's no corporate or overlords really telling them what to do. They kind of make a lot of the calls themselves as to like where they're going to go, whether they're going to boot camp, if they're going home in the middle of tournaments. So I suppose that's like a plus maybe, but it's a plus to a player who's maybe a little bit older. He wants a little bit more freedom. He doesn't want to be told that they have to like boot camp and do this and do that. So I don't know if it's very attractive to like a superstar player, other than like you said, Thorin. I mean, you go to FaZe so you can play under Kerrigan. That's why you would go there. But it makes no sense to me that they let ropz go, because I just think about how much money you watched walk out the door, and that's money that you pay this team, and the cost of running this team, because you're still they've got social media people, like managers, all of that, and salaries, and you've got to fly them all over the world. Why would you just watch free money leave?
I'll even add in as well, that even is what suggests to me. I don't think this is like a decision. I think this is actually someone being too like laissez-faire and being lax and not doing their due diligence. Because the other thing is, if you know how like esports works now, where it's all about getting the buyout, because you're going to have to pay a buyout unless you get this perfect scenario where someone's at the end of their contract. You never let a contract run out. But this is the part people are missing. What you do is, this actually is a thing currently in football that people get really mad about, is if you know that the guy's going to leave, a year early, you get him to sign like a 2-year extension. And then the idea is you can still leave, but then we'll just sell you with a year left on your contract. Then they have to pay us, look, not the max value, but we get something for it. So in this analogy, what you do is probably actually last year in the middle of the year, when things have like, they haven't worked out like how you wanted, you get ropz to sign a 1-year extension or whatever onto his current contract, and then you just say to Vitality in this scenario, look, we're not going to really charge like $1 million, but maybe we need like 300k or something, because the idea is that 300k like offsets some of the costs of getting released or something like that. So that scenario, it's like a plus minus on the balance sheet for us. That's the weirdest thing, is the idea, like, it's not even that he wanted to leave or that he got go for free. It's the idea that you would just sit there and watch his contract go to 0 days, and then you have zero say it. At that point in time, the deal also becomes, by the way, it's also just bad money management, because it just gives your rival a player for even cheaper. Like the joke there is, if they'd have wanted another player, they have to buy out for that guy as well. They could have made like an even crazier super team. You're just lucky that they didn't even need to upgrade.
So obviously now ropz walks into Vitality and they look incredible. But I want to pose something to you, gents. I don't think Vitality, I think Vitality looked pretty incredible last year. I just think that we obviously now know that the team themselves wasn't getting on. But as a team, not getting on, clashing, they were still getting to grand finals and really looking damn good on big stages. So the surprise that everyone had when ropz came in, it kind of surprised me, because I was like, this team was already bloody good. They just literally got the extra 1% they needed to push them over the edge. And not only did they get the extra 1%, they now all get along, it seems, which, whether we like it or not, is actually a big deal in a team environment. So were you super surprised that they were suddenly so good? Or surely both of you kind of expected to see this, dusT?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised at all. I'm maybe surprised that they won all 3 tournaments in a row. Like, you can't really predict that, but the idea that they were going to be continuing to be a top 5 team in the world to me was very obvious, because like you said, last year, for my money, aside from that 6 tournament streak that Na'Vi had where they were making the finals every single event, I thought Vitality was the most consistent team of last year. Like, the only thing that was against them was they didn't have enough trophies in the cabinet compared to the opposition. They got the one in Cologne, which is, to be fair, the most prestigious event you can win outside of a major in our circuit. So big win. But yeah, they didn't have any other wins. They lost the finals in EPL in Dallas, and other than that, it was pretty much 5th, 6th, or top 4 for the rest of the year, and a couple of top 8 sprinkled in. So, in my opinion, results-wise, yeah, they were a team that was very consistently at the top. Their map pool was good. They had loads of talent. siuhy was a top 3 player in the world. Flame's one of the best entries. Like, Apex proved himself for many years now to be a solid IGL. Like, they had everything to be a great team. And so, yeah, it did just seem like if you get the environment just right, if you could just take a couple tweaks here and there, they're a team that should be able to contend for a title every single tournament that they play. But I will admit, like, I certainly didn't expect them just to win everything, at the beginning of the year. You can't ever expect that. The fact that they're on this, like, what is it, like 16 series
16
streak or something
series.
like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you can never expect that, right? Like, barely anyone's ever done that. That's, what's that, one off the Astralis era? And a few off of like Liquid 2019 or something like that.
I think there's only like Liquid and Nip or something. Have more than that or something ridiculous.
Yeah, I know Liquid 2019 has more, but yeah, they're like right there.
There's like a phase one in there, but they count those like Thunderpick online ones for some bizarre one in that one. I've never understood, but whatever. So it is historic, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're doing something that's just like something that barely any team has been able to do in the last 12 years or something like that, yeah, you can't anticipate that level of success.
By the way, I definitely do think, as I said on past episodes, I actually think one day it will be the other way around. People will look at last year's Vitality and go, how did they only win one trophy? I even agree with you, dusT. If you actually want to look, I would argue, look, the major has to be the winner because it's the World Championship. It's obviously the most important tournament. I actually think Cologne, in theory, is the best tournament, though. Like, think about it. To win it, you had to beat Na'Vi in a best of 5. Like, also that stadium, everyone knows that is the iconic stadium to play in. It has all the pressure associated with it. People don't win that IM Colognes by accident. Like, that's one of the hardest tournaments of all time. So, that, if anything, that showed the ceiling of last year's Vitality. The real question is, why couldn't they ever get that to manifest in all the other tournaments? There's a few good reasons. Like, first of all, beyond the Na'Vi factor, which is Na'Vi were really good. By the way, Na'Vi almost never played them. It wasn't even Na'Vi stopping them, if people don't know. What's bizarre is, crucially, it was people like G2. When they played against G2, like, I don't even think that team was like that well-rounded, but Nico and Modesty could just beat them. They just had the skills to actually be able to go head-to-head with their firepower. But I do think it's sad because when I look back, put it this way, I know some things about the internal of the team, and essentially when they were doing that, like, we have issues and we have, it was just spinx as far as I can tell. Like, as far as I can tell, he had some sort of personality conflict with like the team, the way things were done, someone in the team, whatever it was, and so you remove that factor. You don't normally want to be like, this person's the problem, because obviously in game he was adding a lot, but he was doing something to the mix that was making it not work. And I do think actually, maybe this is actually not worked out because he's got a great team now, but I always think to myself, he's the one in 10 years who's going to look back and go, fuck, maybe I should have handled that differently. We could have won everything that year. Like, put it this way, it's going to be hard in your career to ever get a lineup better than that if you're him. Like, if you're at siuhy, you can get someone else to play with you. You don't have siuhy anymore, mate. And so there's not too many of them going around. So I do think, actually, if anything, this isn't totally a mystery, because even if they'd have run that lineup back from last year, I still think they would be in contention to win everything now. Like, I actually do look back, and that is puzzling to me that they won so few titles. That's why, for me, the idea that like there was some sort of like external outside of the server issue impinging on that starts to make a bit of sense. Like, that could be a factor that could downplay some of it. Or, I mean, if you ever look, it's the idea of like for example, that one where they had that pro league where they lost to like Eternal Fire in the semis. Before Eternal Fire was good and before they had Jota, like, that's an example of one where it looks like you just imploded internally. It wasn't that they just beat you and they were just like playing at a 10 out of 10 level. It looks like things started to go badly, and then your morale has spiraled, and then you've sort of destroyed yourself. So I do think there were like glimmers of this last year. The difference as well, that's also why the ropz pickup was genius, because it's not even that he's like I actually think spinx is a better fragger than ropz, but ropz is just a more well-rounded player. ropz' personality seems to have meshed perfectly. They have no issues there. Like, it seems like he just walked in. It's what he wanted. It's what they wanted, and it just has worked.
It has worked, but what happens when it doesn't? Because there is inevitably going to be a time where they either lose or there is
I'm still waiting for it. Still waiting for it.
Yeah, fair. But there is going to be a potential. There will be an argument or whatever. So I suppose it's the question that everyone. What's not the question? It's the comment everyone keeps putting on MOUZ. But I do think it pertains to Vitality as well. Like, honeymoon period ? Like, if there is a time to potentially fall apart, could it happen? Is it the honeymoon period? What do you think, Thorin?
I think it's the honeymoon, but that leads to a beautiful marriage, and they live happily ever after. So there you go. I think it's both, because the problem is, look, here's the one angle that I think I'll tie it to what dusT just said. Look, it is implausible that you're just going to win like 30 series in a row and no one's ever going to beat you. Like, yeah, eventually you're going to lose, and you're going to have a bad day, and you're going to have the day when siuhy plays badly at the same time ropz plays badly, and you're going to have the time where you think you can do this cheeky veto angle and it doesn't work out, and they prep for you on that. It's a bait and a Yu-Gi-Oh! You just activate my trap. And there's going to be all those things happen. That's happened so far, but people have tried all those moves. The problem is, I do think this lineup, that's actually why I also would highlight the personality aspect. Not only in the game do they have everything you'd need to be an all-time great team, if they actually have the balance like it looks like now, I don't really see why they would have the same personality issues. Like, if you think about it, right? After Apex, who's even that spicy in this team? Like, no one really. Like,
so
ropz
nice,
isn't particularly known as like a problem player. Mezzy, by the way, is everyone's dream teammate. Everyone's going to talk about him like fucking Scottie Pippen 20 years from now. Everyone loves to play with this guy. Flames is like a super he really is how he comes out on camera, by the way. Not got that like naive innocence of like a young guy. Just loves the game. So siuhy himself has never actually. The joke is we critique the fact he's not enough of a Michael Jordan arsehole. Like, people sort of want him like LeBron to be more of a dickhead and be like, I'm the best and give me everything. So I actually think they also have like the environment now to survive like the odd blip on the radar. Because here's the thing, I don't normally go crazy. I'm like a little bit skeptical of teams. I look for the flaw. I think this team is going to do everything. I think they're going to win everything this year. They're going to win the Grand Slam, the major. I mean, I said it on Hot Take Point Made, but it wasn't wasn't even that big a hot take to me. I think it's going to be like the best CS2 team. This team looks like they are near unbeatable. Like they have to give you the assist for you to beat them, if you know what I mean. I mean, I think this final even shows it. Think about it, right? When things went awesome, they 13-0'd what's probably the number 2 team in the world. When they had a really hard time on 2 maps, they lost 13-11. Like, bro, how hard is it to beat this team? It feels impossible.
Yeah, I'm going to say this. I think in general, people overblow the quote unquote honeymoon phase sometimes. Like, yeah, sure. There's always the idea of adding something fresh, something new. The idea of maybe like, oh, everyone's putting on like their best face for first impressions when you bring in a new guy. Yes, I agree to some extent that does add more positive vibes and more excitement and things that nature right at the beginning of your team. I agree. But let's be honest, some teams do struggle to figure out how to make a team work in the beginning, whereas some teams hit the ground running and are immediately successful. Sometimes it takes a team a little bit of time. So every team's a little bit different when it comes to the quote unquote honeymoon phase. But I'm with Thorin. Like when you look at this team, even if things start going poorly, the amount of talent that this team has and where they have it at, just for me, makes them built for the long term. Like you literally have all the star talent in just the correct positions. You quite literally have siuhy, who is a Swiss Army knife primary opera who can also rifle very well. Then you have ropz and flames as your other 2 stars who are on opposite ends of the spectrum of what they provide for the team. Flames is the opener, ropz is the closer. So it's like you have it's so well distributed on like where all your talent's coming from. Their map pool looks totally insane right now. I think the one thing that could harm them is that they permaban Ancient, and maybe if someone magically just becomes the best trained team of all time, that could be something that gets exposed a little bit later on. Obviously, their Anubis is a little bit on the weaker, even though they've won their last 4 in a row against elite level teams. So that there are a couple like little gaps here and there I could see people try to attack. I also do think it's hard to maintain like a crazy win rate on dusT too. There's so much variance there. So there's opportunities, but again, even if they start to struggle a little bit, there's just so much talent they can go a different direction in the map pool whenever they need to, that I just can't see them. Like Thorin said, they're not going to win like 30 series in a row. No one's ever going to do anything like what Nip did in the early CSGO. They're eventually going to lose to someone, right? Spirits give them some close games. Obviously, MOUZ is making progress against them head to head. You know, that there is going to be teams out there that will eventually beat them, but I do think that they're still built to outlast pretty much everyone else that I see right now, kind of in the top 5 or top 10. Like any other team you can think of, I think has more flaws you could poke apart compared to Vitality.
That's even one of the areas where, like, if anything, the honeymoon aspect is like an external factor, in my opinion. They've also, I said this on Twitter, they've also locked into a factor that helps you become a generational team, which is no one plans this. One thing I think fans are really mistaken about is I think fans genuinely think you make a lineup and you like sit in a room and you sort of have like a discussion about what your map pool is going to be. No, you play scrims and it just emerges which maps you're good on, which maps people's spots make sense on, and which ones you actually, here's the key thing, which ones you feel comfortable on. There are times people have 70% win rate on a map and they won't ever pick it because they're like, I don't feel like I really have a read on the T side, or I'm not quite sure what to do against this type of team. So the key thing for me is this: if you ever look, it's the most famous thing that people forget to mention about Astralis and Team Liquid when they had that rivalry where basically Astralis won like 2 times ever or something mental out of like 23 times they played. One of the problems they had was all of their maps that they liked to play and pick were also Astralis's best maps. So every time you play Astralis, you're picking their best maps. So that's why they literally just get to beat you 2-0. It doesn't have to be 3 maps. On the other end of the map pool, they have an amazing edge, which is right now the number 2 and number 3 teams in the world, in whatever order you want, is Spirit and MOUZ. And they are 2 teams historically that have really liked Ancient, and that is already the permaban of Vitality. And again, they didn't sit down and go, wouldn't it be sick if we had that? Would just happens to be their permaban. Like essentially happenstance, and where the map pool is at just means that they automatically ban. I mean, the case of MOUZ, one of the actually really strong maps, like a map that they'd want to play against Vitality, but you're not going to get the chance to. And as you say, dusT, like a whole bunch of teams now, this is where people have to give credit to coaches. Guys, coaches knew from scrims in the last 3 tournaments that this team is cracked. They've already been trying the veto pivots. Mongols did it. They're trying to punish pick Anubis. It's just at the moment, Vitality still beats you on it anyway, and then you just feel like an idiot for not picking your best map. So so far, nothing anyone's tried has worked.
I will say one thing, like one caution I will give, and I'm going to give credit to Yanko for kind of pointing this out on Twitter, is Apex has been absolutely bonkers every single grand final that they've played so far. And that is probably going to drop off at some point.
That could be the honeymoon factor. I could give you that one.
Yeah, because his entry stats have been off the charts. He's dominating on the CT side positions he plays as well. And yeah, his ratings have been bonkers, particularly at EPL and, you know, what we just witnessed. So that's the one thing that I think, okay, like that could cool off and that could make things a little bit tougher. But even if that does happen, if like you just get a monster performance out of someone else that makes up for it anyway. So it's just like that's like I'm like really nitpicking to try to find like flaws that you could try to exploit against Vitality right now. Like so far, everything they've shown us is just like
here's
elite,
why
unreal.
I'm not that worried, even if they drop down a bit, Sam. Is at the moment people rarely even win a map against them. Like that, the point is, let's say they play a bit worse. Okay, now it's 3 maps. They're still going to win. The point is, at the moment, it's actually scary because of how far ahead they are. Like, no one can come close. Like, the joke is, if you look over the last 3 tournaments, they've lost something ridiculous. Like, I'm going to say, like, 4 or 5 maps total over, like, I don't know, 30 played or something insane. Like, again, those are impossible numbers for anyone to maintain. Even Prime Astralis didn't do that. They would still go 3 maps for someone sometimes or have super close 2 maps. So, the real reason why I actually think you have to look for, like, this could be like a generational team is they're so far ahead, people can catch up a bit and they'll still be ahead. They're not like neck and neck, and if you catch up, you overtake me. It's why at the moment, everyone's had to do that thing, but you have to. If you have to speculate as like an analyst, you have to start doing what on paper are stupid moves. Like, actually, I guess maybe Spirit should kick Shiro and get Modesty, because you're just trying to make like Avengers teams to beat Thanos. Like, no one can do it right now. You have to do some bonker. Maybe Simple has to come back in. And that's why these conversations all keep getting resurrected, because no one can figure out in the game, how do you stop them?
I am having a laugh. I don't think that this is actually. I'm not going to say that just in case. But dusT made a comment there where he was like, "Oh, they'll never win 30 series in a row." And as he said it, I was like, "My guy, this is the year that Vitality just shocks everyone, wins 30 series, and we clip that, and that becomes your famous line of you saying it'll never happen." But that's the thing. Like Thorin said, if it falls off, it's not really going to matter because they are so much higher than everyone else. Any chinks in the armor, gents, that you think? I mean, dusT, you mentioned a few, but do you think that there are any other chinks? I mean, what do you think all these teams are doing? Because you know that they're sitting at Prax watching and trying to figure out where the hole is in Vitality. What do you think, Thorin?
I mean, it's hard because you have to almost, again, do like ridiculous angles. Like, look, it doesn't happen, so... But in theory, if you had like a bad tournament from siuhy, that also might make you not be the top team. It doesn't, again, good luck waiting for that. You'll be holding your breath for a while. But I have seen, like, I'll give you an example. In this final, there was maps where he was a bit sort of like slower to start. Sometimes he'll like take a while to get into the game. I also do think, by the way, the factor that I mentioned earlier that a lot of people critique about siuhy, that he doesn't come in like simple from round one, like give me all the resources and I'll carry the game because you're all shit and I'm the best. Well, the downside of that is the more help he has, the more unselfish he might be. So you could argue that angle, like he might allow other people. In fact, I'll even mention this literally happened in this final. There was a bunch of times on T-side dusT where actually Apex was the AWPer and not siuhy. That happened like 2 or 3 rounds at least. Like, so there's times where they might do something weird like that. But the problem with that for me is, if that happens, surely this is where Extaz just comes in after the tournament and goes, let's just fix that. And like, you're back on the AWP, or you need to do more in the team. You can't be as unselfish. So I feel like also it's a pretty quick fix on that one. So I don't really know what the average angle is. Why I say at the moment, I'm just trying to think of what if another team did like a massive upgrade or they got the perfect squad for them. Another angle would be, you could throw this out there, what if Valve does change the map pool? That would be interesting. That could throw something off. Like, I'll give you an obvious example. People right now want the old, really like long-term maps, Inferno and Mirage. They're the maps people want removed. If you remove either of those maps, it would make things interesting. Like, if you took their Inferno out, that could be a game changer immediately. I will say though, Spirit bans Inferno. They still lose to them every time. So we'll see if that works.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing about Inferno is even if you took that away from them, they historically weren't that great at Inferno anyway. That's been the big shocker for me, by the way, this year, Thorn. It's the fact that they are 9-0 on Inferno. I meant that they were very hit or miss on last year. So the ropz edition has somehow magically transformed what was a weakness, one of the weaker maps in their pool, in my opinion, to now one of their best next to dusT 2. I mean, in Mirage and Duke, obviously, they have historical precedent of being very good on those maps. And so, again, if you're trying to find chinks in the armor, so to speak, I'm not fully sold on the Anubis. Like, I think there is still maybe a chance that you get something going there. And I do think that train is still right for the taking for anyone. It's so early days for that map. There's still, potential for big changes on that map down the line. Like, those are some opportunities you can get because they do permaban Ancient. But outside of that, yeah, like, other than someone completely falling off a cliff performance-wise or something along those lines, I just don't know what you can do, because it's not like they only play one way and you can counter that. Like, this team is one of the most dynamic teams in the
That's
scene.
true. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Just like the way that they play mid rounds, the way that they can hit you with like just a crazy sneak play or a crazy fake or like a crazy rapid set piece. Like, they're very hard to read. Like, they're a team that has so many different options to go to. They're one of the most versatile teams on the planet, in my opinion, when it comes to their strat book and what they can do on the server. So I don't think you can anti-strat them very well is what I'm getting at. Like, yeah, you'll pick like maybe one or two like little things that, oh, that's like a little pattern that we can maybe exploit, or when they those particular data set, this means this thing that it's likely to happen, and so maybe we can do this. Like, yeah, I'm sure some analysts will get deep into the weeds and like find a couple of counters here and there, but then they'll just move to something else. That's the thing about this team. Like, they can just, you know, kick into high gear, and even if you get in a rut, you just have star players that can break you out of it, like siuhy when he just decides to go nuclear one round and just break the game entirely. So it's like, I don't know what would happen other than some of the few things that we've mentioned that maybe someone could try to attack.
Yeah, by the way, I'll also say that's why I think the underrated narrative with the rise of Vitality is the Apex IGL angle. Like, he is going to actually, for real, contend to be the real number one IGL this year. That's not an exaggeration. Like, I agree with you, dusT. If you think about when they won that major in 2023, the famous switch they made was, it's the move everyone's done with the national team. You just play up tempo. You just basically say, like, speed it up a bit, guys. Let's not make too many decision-making players because we're all speaking different languages from different cultures. And let's just use our fragging and our aim, and we'll use that to bully people. That's not even how they play now. Like, sometimes, by the way, I saw that in this final. I definitely saw it when they played against Mongols at Pro League as well. Sometimes they slow it right down and play like Astralis style, mate, and go really slow and punish people. They've got, I agree with you, they've got the like switch now. That's the other thing. They're not just like, we play this way. If you look at teams like Eternal Fire, they do have one style of play. And if it works, they knock you out. And if it doesn't, they lose. Vitality is also really hard to get a bead on in that sense because they're also using all these tools. Like, I agree with you, mate. Like, I actually think they've got way more in the locker in terms of like styles they can pull out than just like, this is the Vitality style and it works or it doesn't.
I think ropz was the one who said this, and I hope I'm not misplacing his name here, but he said that he was worried that they'd peak too soon before the major. Obviously very happy with the trophies and winning.
All right, suffering from success, fucking
so the
dodgy
question
APEG.
is,
Okay, mate.
do we think he's just taking, I mean, I thought maybe he was just taking the piss, but it is a valid question because you can't just keep going up.
Sure.
Or would you say, dusT, that this is the prime time to be where Vitality is right now?
I think it's fine because, look, they have a pretty big break between their next event, which is Melbourne, if I'm not mistaken. So they have like 2 or 3 weeks off. So you're going to have an opportunity to kind of chill, rest, build some new things that you can use in the future if you need to. Things that you have right now aren't really working. It kind of gives you a chance to kind of reset and refresh. And we're not that far from the major. Like, they're going to play Melbourne, Dallas, and then they're right into the major. So it's not like they have like a long way to go to get to the goal that they're trying to hit. Like, it's not like the major's so far away that, you know, peaking now means that the major's like 6 events from now and like all of a sudden you might be in some trouble. People will have figured you out by then. No, that's not the case at all. Like, you're going to have a chance right now to build more stuff, and then B, you're obviously going to have time after Dallas, you know, to boot camp and come up with more stuff before the major even starts. So I actually think that it's totally fine, you know, how things are right now. Like, who's going to complain about winning 3 trophies in a row? I mean, it just means that things have gone better than expected off the launch pad. Like, things have hit the stride a little bit better. So I wouldn't concern myself with the whole peaking too early thing. Like, it's only been a few events. You got plenty of time as well to build, you know, other stuff. I think the only real problem would be is like, no one's really countered you yet. So you don't know what's not working. But that's when you just have to kind of think a little bit ahead. Like, what's just some new stuff we can add just in case something breaks? Like, let's just build some extra stuff, you know? So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
I think that whole topic is whack as fuck because it's a self-report. Whoever says that, who goes, oh, you might be peaking too early, you know, most teams can't maintain this. It's like that famous stat, you know, that stat that people think's a black pill where they go, oh, it's actually not even true. But the famous stat everyone's heard is they go, oh, in the modern day, 50% of marriages end in divorce, right? If you hear that and go, oh, no point then, it's 50-50. No, it's 50-50 if you're average. What, you're average? I don't know about you. I'm above average. I'm extraordinary. You've not, ordinary patterns don't apply to me. I'd be the 1% that fucking makes it. What are you talking about? So if I'm Vitality and I have siuhy and ropz, I'm going no, because here's the thing, you're right, a normal team would fall off. They win a couple of events. We're going to be the greatest team ever. Haven't you seen who we've got in our lineup? Look at what we're doing. Look at the thing. If anything, we're going to keep going, and it's actually going to be the other way around. It's going to be like Astralis. Everyone's going to be demoralized when we win this major. We've won all the events in a row. It's going to be everyone. Here's what I predict, the other way around. The next player break will be all the other teams like, fuck, we all have to do a roster mania again, or we're never going to beat these guys. So I think it'll be the other way around. I think they're going epic. There you go.
I had another question, but I just like that little motivational speech there from Thorin. Remember that. Don't be average.
Get married. Yeah. Unless you lose, in which case definitely don't. You're the ones bringing the fucking average down, you losers.
All right, he went to get married. I was like, just, try to be better than average. But there you go. Let us know in the comments if you think that this is the start of the Vitality era, and we'll be back soon with another episode.